So when we start talking about the difference in functional athletes and what people need and different exercises and things like this, usually you break all those down into the sport. Like, we're specifically talking about female athletes. We're talking about softball, baseball, softball, soccer, basketball, whatever. All the training is different. There's one thing that all female athletes need to focus on, and all coaches and parents need to really kind of recognize and focus on for all female athletes, is the strength of the neck. When we talk about, everybody talks about concussions and they immediately start thinking about football. They're like, oh my gosh, people who play football have giant numbers of concussions, and the pro athletes and NFL, like, it's concussion. The number one place that we see concussions is in female sports. So first of all, when we start talking about this, let's kind of dial this back and be like, okay, how do we get concussions? You don't get a concussion from hitting the head. That's not really where it comes in. What happens is when the brain hits the skull, and when the way that the skull and the brain collide is that the head starts to move faster than, so the outside of the skull moves faster than the inside of the skull, where the brain can move. So think of it like this. You've got a shell with a bunch of fluid surrounding an object in the center. And as the things move, if they move slowly enough, these things never touch. If they move really fast, it'll slam into it. And then the bigger problem is that then when you get to the other end, where it's here and it whips back, you hit the other side. It's called a contra-coup concussion. So we get hit here, and then, as we're translating over here, the skull slams into the brain. We get to this point, and it whips back. And as it whips back, the skull then hits the brain on that side. So that's where a lot of this comes from. Well, the easiest way to reduce this isn't with new helmets or new fancy things. Strengthen the neck. Because what we're trying to do is we're trying to slow down the translation of the skull and the head. So if you get hit here and you've got a big, thick neck, all that force has to go into moving the skull through the neck. All that energy can dissipate into the neck musculature and the structure, and it can radically decrease movement of the head, and thus it can decrease impact to the brain, or thus decreasing concussions. This is why it's so radically important. Like, one of the things that, I don't care if I've got guys in here on fighting sports. So Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, you've got boxing, karate, taekwondo, regardless of what it is. If you're going to be taking head strikes or people are going to be knocking you down, the number one thing we start doing is we start strengthening the neck. Now, the best tool to strengthen the neck is the iron neck. It is by far the best tool I've ever seen to do this. It's a little bit pricey. I think it's worth it. If you have female athletes, if you're guys, if you just don't want concussions, if whatever, strengthening the neck is going to radically decrease your concussion force and the damage from your concussions. So if you get a big, strong neck and you get a level 2 concussion, that could have been a level 4. In my case, I'm alive because of my neck. When I got in my car wreck, so I shattered my car window with my face, broke my left foot, my left femur, rolled my car over several times. It was not a great day for me. Had to be cut out of the car, life flighted to Parkland. Well, I'm kind of coming in and out. The head neurologist came down to figure out why I wasn't dead. And when he saw my neck, he was like, oh, that makes sense. He was like, that's why he's alive. So, which is kind of funny because we talked about later. The size of my neck saved my life in the car wreck, but it's slowly killing me because it's adding to my sleep apnea issues. So, double-edged sword. But that's one of those things we got to really start to recognize and start kind of pouring into, is if we want our athletes, specifically our female athletes, to have less concussions, we need to strengthen their neck. Now, this does not mean their neck needs to be this big. Like, you're not going to find a 15-year-old girl with a neck this big. So it is what it is. But if we can start strengthening the neck and thus reducing the damage from these falls and from these hits, it'll help tremendously. One of the things that people don't recognize is that, we look at, volleyball, basketball, and soccer as some of the top places where female athletes get their concussions. And the question is always, well, how many girls are getting hurt in these sports? First of all, lots of girls play those 3 sports. So there is a number factor. We kind of have to factor into that. But 2, they fall down a lot. It's not that someone's hitting them in the head. It's that when they fall down, they're, a lot of these girls are 5'2" to 6 feet tall, and your volleyball and basketball players are kind of taller. So what ends up happening is that you have a longer arm, a longer fall down rate. And when you hit the ground, the head whips back and forth and there's your concussion. So this is where a lot of this stuff starts coming in. So if we're starting to strengthen the neck, and the other big one that we know is that if these women have more creatine in their system when they have this translational impact, it radically increases the healing function. And so, we heal a lot faster from concussions. Like, you can look this up, just Google, creatine neuroprotective for concussions. I use a lot of National Institute of Health research, but you can, go through that and find it, whatever level you like. There's a ton of research on it, and it was all incidental, which is my favorite kind of research. Because we're like, why did this group of people not get better twice as fast than this group of people? And then we looked at them and we're like, oh, all of these were on creatine. Well, that's interesting. Let's specifically look at that. And we specifically looked at it and we're like, oh crap, it's really great for the brain. Fantastic. So that's one of those things that, we weren't going after this, but we found it incidentally, and so it was a really cool finding. That's some of my favorite research. So that's kind of what we found. So if you're wondering, should I let my kids, take creatine? 100% the answer to that's yes. If they're working out in any sport, yes. And I've got a kid right now who had a really bad concussion, like altered the way he walked type of bad concussion. He got it riding his bike, had a helmet on, whole 9 yards, but he got his concussion, he was a football player, that was really bad from riding his bike. So it's kind of one of those questions of, should all the kids be on this? Mine are. My 10 and my 12-year-old are. My 12-year-olds, they're both lifting. So they're both, as far as 10 and 12-year-olds should. But, it's more for neuroprotective function, and so that's one of my big pieces of it. It is a fantastic thing. And don't worry about taking too much. There's always an upper limit, but you're going to know. Usually what I tell people is roughly 5 grams for every 100 pounds of body weight, you're safe. You can most likely do more than that. But if we're looking for the, across the board, easy thing, yeah. So I don't measure mine. I probably take 20 grams a day, somewhere in there. I just scoop it out with a spoon and toss it in my drinks. And that's how I take mine. We put it, the one that we have in the office, it'll be on the website, maybe end of next week. That one we use for baking a lot. So we can put it in cookie dough balls. We can put it in protein balls. We can put it in muffins. We can put it in pancakes. We can put it in pretty much everything. So like when we're working with athletes and they're like, oh man, I'm trying to, gain mass, but stay lean. And I want to eat, good, tasty food. You just put it in the food. Like if it's a high enough quality and it's the right grind and the right texture, it'll mix in really, really well. So, that's what it's kind of funny because like when I look at my proteins and the stuff that we're going to bring on, I look for obviously, chemical functionality, and, everything has to be quantum functionally, set so that it works through a quantum state. But then how well will this mix with things where we're trying to bake with it? Because a lot of the proteins that we take in, we use in baking. So, it's one of those things that like a lot of the recipes we have that we use are all high protein. They're all set up that way. So this is, people always ask me like, how is it that you fix diabetes eating cookie dough and ice cream? So, well, it's because you make it differently. It's amazing. In my opinion, some of the stuff tastes as good or better than the normal stuff, but that's just how you do it. So if you've got female athletes who are having trouble gaining mass, if they're having trouble, if you're worried about concussions, which you should be, not like stay awake at night worrying about it, but you should at least be on your mind of, I have a female athlete who's going to be doing X, Y, and Z. She's going to be falling down. So the two things that we need to recognize is that, one, she's going to run the risk of concussion. So we need to do the things to support that. Creatine is a great one. Strengthening the neck's a great one. And if she's going to fall down, her hips are going to get out, and that's going to push her in a very, very, very real way into damage to the ACL and knee injuries, because the way the pelvis directly affects the ACL. So, those two things you got to keep in fact. So the ACL thing, get her to a chiropractor who understands pelvic function. If all they do is put them on their side and roll them, they're not doing pelvic function. Pubic symphysis work, SI work, stuff like that. I like drop tables. You don't have to use them, but that's my favorite. So if you have female athletes that are not getting adjusted on a regular basis, you definitely need to get them into a chiro. Doesn't have to be me, but somebody who understands, what's going on with the neck and what's going on with the pelvis. But yeah, so if you have female athletes and you're worried about concussions, you're worried about their brain function, that type of thing, strengthen the neck, creatine. Obviously, sleep's a big one. There's all sorts of hormonal stuff we do with this, but the easy things that everybody can do: take a little bit of creatine and strengthen that neck. If you guys have any other questions, hit us up, questions@chalmerswellness.com, or drop them in the comments, or do what you guys always do, just call the office. All right, you guys have a nice day. Thanks for your time.